All right. All right. Hey, guys. Good to see all of you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Makar Naguib, and it's a blessing to be among you. I care so much about healthy marriages and especially about making sure that marriages are able to be resilient and to um, be able to withstand the stresses and the challenges that are going to come from the environments that we're in, because the stresses are going to come, the surprises are going to come, the challenges are going to come. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. And anyone here that's been married for more than maybe 3 days knows that marriage is a lot of work, right? And you just get confronted with so many things. You get married and then bam, you just get confronted with something. And maybe it's a character flaw in yourself and you don't even realize that you're getting confronted with your own character flaws. Maybe it's a challenge that you didn't expect in life. Maybe somebody got sick or something happened financially or whatever it is. So what we want to talk about today with God's grace is building a hedge around your marriage, building a hedge around your marriage. And I welcome questions during and after. And there's somebody monitoring the chat for the people who are on Zoom. So if questions come in, feel free to interrupt me, whoever's monitoring the chat, and feel free to ask here too. I'll repeat any questions that anybody asks from the group so that they can be heard on Zoom. So the integrity of our marriages is being challenged, And what I'm going to do is kind of start off our talk. I don't like to do this, but I'm going to start our talk off on a low note, So sorry in advance. But I want to just show you what's going on. And I want you to disagree with me if you think that these aren't relevant, if I'm just making stuff up or if I'm making things sound too negative. But I believe it's real. I believe this is real. And I want to divide the challenges that we're facing in marriage as a construct, and our marriages, our individual marriages are facing challenges. So marriage as a construct is facing challenges, and our individual marriages are facing challenges. One of the challenges that marriage as a construct is facing is a trend of comparison against others, that we are comparing how we're doing against like how other people are doing. And this is, of course, is made worse or exacerbated through social media. We just see what other couples are doing. We see what other people are doing. And then we're like, wait, why is that couple looking so happy? Why is that couple, buying this thing or going on this vacation or doing that, right? And this trend of comparison is something that marriages in general are facing, and we feel like we're lacking or falling behind. Another challenge is devaluation of marriage in general as a healthy construct and arrangement. That actually society is telling you that you could just live together. You don't have to get married. What is the point of marriage itself? It's kind of like this thing you can just choose to do. If it works for you, it works for you. If it doesn't, make something else work, and that's it. So marriage and its sacredness is being devalued. There's a question. I love when you get yourself in trouble. Yes. Okay. Someone has a question?
I'm going to put my mask on because now I want to make sure. Okay. Well, so how is marriage supposed to be of any value if, essentially a marriage between a book and a book cover is just as valuable as what the biblical traditional gender role-defined role of biblical marriage is basically being eroded, where it can be anything you define it to be. Like you could literally define a marriage between your dog and your cat, and that would be kind of seen as a viable marriage.
Yeah. And actually you're touching on one of the critical aspects of the hedge around your marriage, which is spiritual awareness and understanding of what marriage is, right? So what is our marriage actually the answer doesn't start with what is our marriage. It starts with who is God, right? And for you, because I'm speaking to a group of Christians, right? And we can say, what would we say to the world? But if somebody in the world who doesn't believe in God, starts to challenge marriage, I really don't have much to say. You know, maybe I can say, well, statistics show that certain types of relationships are more likely to lead to X, Y, and Z and more fulfilling lives. Maybe I can say something like that. But for us as Christians, why marriage is good and right actually doesn't start with marriage. It starts with God himself. And God invented marriage. Like, where did marriage come from? It actually didn't come from society. It actually didn't come from society as a way to procreate or anything like that. God was the one who started it. He's the one who he commanded it, right? So as Christians, and this is going to come up on, we have a whole slide on this, but as Christians, when we think about marriage, it starts with God. And God is the reason why I need to do this marriage thing right. And God is the reason why, actually, God should be the reason why I'm getting married in the first place, right? Like, I shouldn't be getting married because it's the next thing to do in my life. Actually, that's a ticket to a really difficult marriage, right? It's going to be a rude awakening. But if you started your marriage knowing that this is part of my personal relationship with God, that this is something that God is very, very invested in, God is very invested in the health of our marriages, then when we have conflict and struggles in marriage, then we're going to have a way to work through it with God as our foundation. But socially, I can't say that to anybody, like, who's not a Christian. I'm not going to say that. I'll say something else. So also, and by the way, if you're not satisfied, you could say that with my answer. Yeah, and I agree with your point, which is that according to the world, anything can be called marriage, but not according to Christians. And that's a very important point. And I want this point to be so clear that what's going on in our homes has very much to do with God himself. And once you separate God from what we're doing at home, you're opening up the door to anything, to hell itself. Once God is out, right? Once God is out, the door is open to hell. Like, and I mean it. And I work with couples, and I've been in homes where I see it, you feel like Satan is working, right? And that's a very, very sad place to be. And any of us who have been in low places in our marriage, we know that it is a very lonely, sad, disgusting place to be, right? When you're in a low place in your marriage and separate from God. Actually brings up to our next point, divorcing marriage from God's design and intention for it, right? Another challenge that marriage as a construct is facing today is inadequate messages from our society and community about what it takes to maintain a thriving marriage. That society is not telling us that marriage requires work, right? I always love to use this example. Do you ever see in the movies, a romantic movie, where a couple is sitting down talking about their finances? You just don't see it, right? But that's necessary, right? That's not interesting. It's boring, right? But that has to happen, right? But you don't see it. And all these things that we're going to talk about today, you usually don't see society telling you, hey, get ready. If you're about to get married, there's a lot of work coming your way. Now, individual marriages, what are like my marriage, your marriage, all of our marriages, we're also facing challenges separate from the ones that we're facing as a construct in general, is low appreciation for straightforward changes. That there are straightforward changes that we have to make that if we don't make them, it is almost guaranteed that you're going to have problems, X, Y, Z problems. X will lead to Y. If you don't make this change, you're going to have this problem in your marriage. And it's so predictable and it's so consistent, but we don't appreciate them, right? And I think also in our personal lives, God tells us, hey, just make this change. You're going to be all right. And we just don't make the change, right? We just don't make, like sometimes I spend times in sessions with people, like 10, 15 sessions, we're talking about the same change and they're just not making the change. I don't know what else we're going to do, right? So, but we don't appreciate them as much. Another thing is mismanagement of, or lack of awareness of, and lack of responsibility for unreasonable expectations. Unreasonable expectations. We come into marriage expecting things that actually, you know what? No, like that's not what marriage is like. That's not what you need to make marriage work. Yes. Oh, okay. So the question is, oh, wait, okay, go ahead.
Can you give an example of a straightforward change?
Yes, an example of a straightforward change. Ready? Never raise your voice. Straightforward change. Never raise your voice. Just don't. Ever. Unless there's danger. Unless there's danger, that's it. Straightforward change. Never disrespect your spouse. Like never call them a name. Like don't name call, right? Straightforward change. If you, like, once you raise your voice, this is researched. Once you raise your voice, the fight, flight, or freeze defense mechanism kicks in. Any hopes for a solution are off the table now. It's not gonna happen, right? Once you raise your voice. I mean, sometimes even me, like I'm in a session with a couple and one of them raises their voice and my defense mechanism kicks in, right? And I'm like, I gotta, just kind of talk to myself and calm myself down, right? Because I need to work with what's going on. Yes, another question, yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, thank you for being interested in what I have to say.
We are.
I wanted to say, when that does happen, I believe that for some people that is an irrevocable signal for conflict. But are there ways back once there is that high tension back from the brink? How do you pull back from the brink of a fight? Because we've all been at this game long enough to know that you can sort of start to recognize bad patterns after maybe you've made an initial blunder. And the trick is, for some people, you're able to walk your way back to sanity. And then for others, once you cross that line, it's on.
Yeah, yeah. And as you probably already know about the fight, flight, or freeze defense mechanism, what ends up happening, actually, your heart rate goes up, right? You probably start to sweat. You probably, your adrenaline kicks in, right? All these things start to happen. Your body actually needs some time for those things to kind of, it's almost like self-soothing, like it needs to kind of calm down, right? So, and that's the problem. Once it kicks in, all of a sudden you've like wedged into the communication and discussion 20, 30 minutes that now everybody needs to time out. Once you so once somebody raises their voice, up 30 minutes, we all gotta wait now because our bodies need to calm down, right? And so we need that. And that's why a lot of times I say we have to learn the skill of, we have to pull back. We have to pull back. We have to know how to pull back from discussions. Say, hey, I can't. Like we're not able to right now. We need to pull back from the discussion and let's agree on a time to come back to the discussion, right? So a negative thought, yes. No, sure. I welcome the questions, yeah.
We're really messed up.
No, I appreciate the questions.
No, but could that potentially be seen by one of the spouses as like
Withdrawal, stonewalling, yes.
or stonewalling,
Yes,
or
yes.
I'm not interested in the topic, or I'm an ostrich putting the head in in the sand and avoiding the whole topic altogether.
Absolutely.
All those kind of
Absolutely.
behaviors.
Such a good question. So what we need to do then is, when we're not in a conflict, give each other permission to pull back when we think we're about to be unproductive, right? So so we have to agree, not during a conflict, before now, like right now on our way home, hey, that was a really good point that we all discussed. Let's agree. If we feel like we're about to be unproductive as a couple, can we give each other permission right now? And let's agree on even the words we're going to say to each other, so that we can pull back. We can say we're going to pause calm voice, never raise your voice. So words of endearment. Honey, I don't think I can do this right now, but I do want to continue this conversation, and I know this is important to you. It's important to me too, and I do want us to come to a conclusion. Is it okay because I've put on yourself? Is it okay because I feel that I am not able to respond in the way you need me to? Is it okay if we pause the discussion, but we'll come back tomorrow right after we feed the kids dinner? Is that okay? And I want to do that, and I love you. Agree on that now, right? And if you say we don't think of that in the heat of the moment, who wants to do that? That's on you. That's you, right? And I can tell you, if you don't do that, you only have one destination, right? So you have only two choices. It's either that or a conflict that's gonna just, snowball. There's only two options in married life here with this type of stuff. So, yes, another question. I hope we're still monitoring the chat, by the way. Okay.
Sorry that we got like completely sidetracked.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, we're covering points that will come up later, so this is saving us some time. So.
But like, I know someone who is like well versed in this kind of stuff. It's not my wife, but well versed in this kind of stuff, to the point where whenever I'm like having a discussion with this person, even if it's not like an intense discussion, it's just like a regular conversation, they say like, oh, forgive me, but I don't have like the energy to respond to you in the way that would be thoughtful right now. Can I get back to you later about this? And I'm just like, of course, sure. And that later never comes.
Yeah, so very good. So you're just, you're confirming a point and I want to reiterate this point. It's important to agree and specify the time to come back. That's why I said in the example, after we feed the kids dinner tomorrow. Like you have to agree on that, because otherwise it will be seen as someone is withdrawing. But if we agree on the time and then we make sure we do it, and if you want like first prize here, you're going to be preparing for that discussion before the time comes, right? So you're not just going to try to wing it after you feed the kids dinner, right? You're going to be thinking, and we'll talk about some other things that you should be doing to prepare to have a healthy disagreement.
I feel that people are different, and the function of being able to think on the fly is an executive function. Because of what we do, we're very good at that. But then some people need to sort of percolate. And trust me, because I run into this with Christine all the time. Like, I think at 1,000 miles an hour, as you all know, and I talk at 1,000 miles an hour, as you all know. And Christine is much more sort of slow in her sort of reasoning process. And what comes out is always great. But if there's a mismatch of speed, I think that's when that happens. And I really feel that stonewalling. I actually, what did I say? I say, you fight like the Viet Cong do. Like, I try to like assault with logic, and then you go underground, pop up, throw a grenade, and then go back down, and then I end up losing. So that's just sort of, I know that pattern very well, but I think it has to do with the mismatch of the strength of executive function and the mismatch of processing speed.
And also personality differences as well, and introversion and extroversion and lots of other things too. There's so much going on where we need to be more sophisticated in our approaches.
And so I'm proud to say I'm losing the Vietnam War.
So let's continue. I love the questions, by the way. I'm really appreciating them. So please keep them coming. So another challenge that our individual marriages are facing is an unhealthy level of busyness. We are too busy. We're too busy, right? Due to poor boundary setting, difficult life circumstances, or a pursuit of busyness in order to feel validated. Sometimes we're busy because that's like the proxy we have for feeling like we're productive and valuable people. Like sometimes there's this sense of satisfaction when somebody asks you, hey, how are you doing? And you're like, yo, I'm so busy, bro. So much is going on, right? I'm so tired. I don't sleep, right? And we feel like that is a way of like, wow, like I'm such a valuable, productive person. I don't sleep, right? I am so busy, bro, and all this stuff, right? And that's something that happens in society, or we feel sometimes. Or it could be due to poor boundary setting, or just sometimes for some people too, life is just very, very difficult, and you can't control. There's a lot of things that are not in your control. Another thing, there's just 3 more, is poor behaviors from well-intentioned in-laws or other family members, right? That and I emphasize well-intentioned because I don't want us to think that our in-laws have bad intentions unless they've explicitly communicated that to us, right? But even though people have good intentions, they might do unhelpful things, right? And sometimes even we do that in our own marriages, right? We have good intentions, but we do unhelpful things, right? All right. And another thing is failure to completely shift from a single mindset. So sometimes we get married and we just don't realize what it's going to take. Sorry, is it too small? Oh man. All right, sure. Sorry about that. I always need to learn about my presentation tech before I. Oh, okay. Failure to completely shift from a single mindset is that we're not ready for the oneness that needs to happen with another person who's different from us, right? We're coming into marriage. We still want to hang out with our boys or with our girlfriends, 3 times a week, right? We we're not really giving any input or investment in a lot of like family time, right? Whatever it is, right? We're not appreciating that being married is a shift in life, right? Lastly, is poor integration of God in personal life and married life. And the challenge that I'm mentioning here is sometimes if you see God as like this thing here and you just kind of touch base with it, you just kind of touch base with God on Sundays but that's very different from seeing God as your reason for existing. That's different from seeing God as present when I'm having any conversation with my spouse, right? And that's very different from me seeing God as a source of hope when I'm facing a challenge, as him being the first person I turn to when I'm in trouble. That's very different from seeing God as this thing right here and that we just keep like checking in with on Sundays, for example, right? This poor integration of God in our married life and in our personal lives is a challenge that our marriages are facing, right? Because we haven't integrated him. He's not at the center. Even though, by the way, when we were getting married, he's part of the covenant, guys. He's part of it, right? He's there, right? He's there. That we got married with him at the center, but we don't live as if he is. All right. So I want to start off with a helpful perspective here. Your marriage, this is your marriage. And I love this, this thing here. It's a circle. I know it's just a circle, but I want you to think of your marriage as a third entity. There's you, there's your spouse, and then there's this third entity called your marriage, okay? Because sometimes when we think of our marriage, we're pretty much just saying our marriage is what I am seeing. Like my experience of marriage is my marriage. But I don't want you to look at your marriage that way. Your marriage is not your experience of your marriage. Your marriage is a third entity, right? And I want you to see it that way, as a separate entity, okay? Because that's like a technical point, but that's what we're doing in therapy anyway, right? A couple comes in, one person has a version of the story, the other person has a version of the story, and it doesn't really matter who's right or wrong, right? What we're looking at is the system. There's a system, and the system isn't functioning well, right? So think of it as this third entity and look at it and say, hey, I know I'm experiencing some things in marriage that I like, some things that I don't like. But if I just step back for a second, and I just look at the marriage, I just look at this whole thing here. How is it going? Right? And then you can start to see that I have an input, they have an input, and there's things going on. Your marriage is facing all these challenges. All these things in these boxes are from the last slide. By the way, they're the things from the last slide. Okay, necessary behavioral changes not being implemented. Those are the straightforward changes. Negative thought patterns, comparison, busyness, disconnection from God, underestimation of efforts needed. That's when society doesn't tell you the amount of work you need. So these are all the challenges that your marriage is facing, right? That my marriage is facing. So now let's talk about a hedge before we talk about what we're going to do, how to build this hedge. So what is a hedge? A hedge is a protection or a barrier or protection against something. That's from our trusteddictionary.com. And usually because a hedge, which is this thing here, like this is a home, this is a building, and there's a hedge around it, right? A hedge, usually it's made out of like shrubs or some plant. So sometimes it's called a living fence, okay? A hedge is actually mentioned in the Bible many times, okay? And I just want to show you a few examples. Satan was critical of God's protection of Job. And he said that, he said, have you not made a hedge around him? Right? Because Satan was saying, hey, God, of course Job is going to follow you. You made a hedge around him, right? What if you take that hedge away? Then let's see what Job is going to do. So Satan said to God, he said, have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. Another example is David, when he speaks of God's presence and care for us. This is in Psalm 139, one of these it's a beautiful psalm about God's care for each of us individually, personally. Even if we were in hell, that's God still cares for us, right? It says, you have hedged me behind and before and laid your hand upon me. This touches my heart so much, that knowing that no matter what, God he's hedged around me, right? He's created a hedge around me, and his hand is on me. You know when like your kids are walking by your side and you put your hands on them, right? Like you lay your hands on them, right? And you kind of keep them close. Right? That's what God does with us. Lastly, in the parable of the tenants, Jesus explains what happens when you first build a vineyard. Here another parable. There was a certain landowner who planted a vineyard and set a hedge around it. Because you don't want any animals, you don't want any threats, you don't want any challenges to come in and corrupt or defile or to steal from the vineyard. So you build a hedge around it. So what makes up the hedge in your marriage? So this is our marriage now, and this hedge is what is here around our marriages. There's 5 things that make up the hedge. Skills make up the hedge. I'm going to talk about each of these things, so you can imagine there's going to be 5 slides after this. 2 is spiritual awareness. 3 is sophisticating your perspective. And I don't mean sophisticated like you're in a different class of people, right? I mean, you have to have a sophisticated perspective, meaning you can't like be lazy in your thinking about your marriage. You have to think in a sophisticated way. It's complex. What's going on in our marriages is complex. So don't be lazy in how you think about it. Think carefully. Think in a sophisticated way, and we're going to talk about that. Number 4 is resources, and number 5 is proactive behaviors. And now you can see all these challenges and threats. They have a lot to get through before they can really get to your marriage, right? So let's go through these one by one. Skills. As I always love to say about skills are not personality traits. You know what's so great about that? It doesn't matter who you are. You can learn the skill. It's a skill. It's like riding a bike. It's like learning how to ride a bike. You don't need to be an introvert to ride a bike. You don't need to be an extrovert to ride a bike. Anybody can do it. You learn how to do it. It's a skill, right? And sometimes you need to learn skills in order to discipline yourself out of my own character flaws. We go into marriage with flaws in our character. And because marriage is so intimate, we get confronted with our own character flaws so often. You have a bad temper, I have a bad temper. Well, nobody cared enough to say something about it. At the end of the day, I always used to go back to my apartment, and that was it. But then I get married, and who do I go back to? My spouse. So if I have a bad temper, my spouse is my mirror, right? My spouse is my temper is gonna bounce right back at me, right? And it's gonna be like, wait, why are you all of a sudden complaining about my temper? Nobody ever told me anything about my temper. But this relationship is so unique, right? It's so unique. And we're gonna talk about the spiritual side in the next slide. So I wanna tell you, I'm gonna kind of throw at you 5 skills, and within each of these buckets, I'm going to throw some things at you. I don't want you to get overwhelmed. The slides will always be available. You could send them out. But I just want you to think of, hey, that's a lot of stuff there. I wonder if I can pick 1 or 2 of these things and learn and like kind of start to practice them. the same way I practiced how to ride a bike, the same way I learned how to write, right? When I learned how to write, it was very clunky in the beginning, right? But then it became so refined. It became like second nature to write, right? Nobody thinks about writing anymore. We just kind of do it, right? So these are some skills. And communication skills, appreciate that small changes in how we say something can change the way that a message is received. And of course, like I said, volume of your voice. Also, you can change the sequencing of your message. Start with the positive, and then go into the thing that's can be seen as a criticism. Ask questions. Challenge your own assumptions. Like as you're talking with someone, start to ask questions to kind of confirm that your understanding is correct. Right? Because we often are not, and we're going to talk about this later, but we do not see things the way our spouse sees them. And one of the most basic things you can do is start with the assumption that you don't understand. You don't understand. For the rest of our lives, my fathers, brothers, and sisters, we are always going to be a student of our spouse. For the rest of our lives, we're always going to be a student of our spouse. Right? And what I mean by that is that my spouse is always going to be teaching something to me about themselves. They're always going to be revealing something. And I need to be a good student. I need to learn. I need to just be like, wait, wow, I just learned something new. I just learned something about their perspective. I just learned something about their preferences. I just learned something about an experience they had when they were 7 years old. And I didn't realize that they were still hurt by that. All I had to do was challenge my assumptions, ask questions, and be in a learning posture. Listen very carefully with a genuine motivation to understand your spouse. These are all very important communication skills. Boundary setting. Say no to things that push you beyond your capacity. Say no to things that push you beyond your capacity or that impose on the values that you have with your spouse. Another important point is each partner is responsible to manage boundaries with their biological family. Like, so don't don't go and start to manage conflict in your in-laws family, right? You have your own spouse take care of their family. That's like a really safe place to start. Right? And it's probably the safest place to end too. Like, so it's very, very, very unlikely that we're going to change anything with our in-laws. Just don't do it, right? And actually, God willing, next month, we're going to have a whole talk about in-laws. And by the way, I promise I have a wonderful relationship with my in-laws. So I'm just saying. Thank you. So, also, what? Yeah, Monica. Another one is see your relationship with your spouse as a sacred top priority above all other relationships except for your relationship with God, right? But your relationship with God, your relationship with your spouse is under the umbrella of your relationship with God. And we have examples of this outside of marriage. When Jesus said, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was sick, you visited me, all these things, right? So Jesus, and he said, whenever you did it to the least of my brethren, you did it to me, right? So when you do it to your spouse, you're doing it to him, of course, right? Like that's obvious, right? So my relationship with my spouse is under the umbrella of my relationship with God. And that's why it says I think it was in 1 Peter, but I forget where if the husband doesn't listen to, doesn't care for his wife, his prayers will be hindered, right? That if you're not caring for your spouse, your prayers will be hindered. And actually, St. Paul says to Timothy that the person who doesn't take care of his house, especially the needs of his household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. And what does it mean to provide for your household? It is not just money. It's not just money. It means emotional provision, spiritual provision, right? Like that's what it means to provide for the needs of your household. That's what it means to provide, right? If this was all about money, anybody can do it. Anybody can do it, right? All right, so see your relationship with your spouse as a sacred top priority, even above your relationship with your children, right? One of the best gifts that you can give to your children is a healthy marriage. One of the best gifts that you can give to your children is a healthy marriage. Another skill is negotiation and teamwork. This is the most complicated slide, by the way. The rest are going to be bigger size text. Is negotiation and teamwork. It's no longer about doing things your way. It's about moving forward. Just move forward. Keep going. Don't get stuck on, who didn't put the sock in the hamper. Don't get stuck on who didn't say what to the kids. Don't get stuck. And we're going to talk about this a little more later. But there's only 3 hours left in the evening that you have together. There's only 3 hours. It's not like when you fight, that time is you've created more time to fight, and then you still have 3 hours left to be positive. There's only going to be 3 hours. If you spend an hour fighting, you're going to need an hour to recover, and maybe you're not going to recover that night. And then you only have 2 hours left, and then everybody's tired and going to sleep, and you can't appreciate the positive time, right? So the goal, there's so much value in just not getting stuck. Like just keep going. Act as if it happened the first time. As long as you're not compromising your values and you don't feel like you're being suppressed as a person. And those types of issues you're not going to solve in those 3 hours anyway. What I would say is those who don't fight well they won't have good marital outcomes if they don't fight well, because it's easy to fight. Fighting is easy to do, but to have a disagreement in a constructive way, that is where you want to be as a couple. Like not to have disagreements for the sake of having disagreements, but you have a disagreement and then you're done with it and you're like, wait, we feel closer after that. I feel understood. I feel heard. I'm glad I shared my point of view, and somehow I like our conclusion. We have a good conclusion. It might not be what I wanted. It might not be what they wanted, but we have a good conclusion. So that's a fight that'll lead to a good outcome. But there's a fight. We know those fights that don't lead to good outcomes, right? Yeah. And there's people who fight through their fights are in a passive way, right? And these are people who are disengaged, from their marriages, or they're stonewalling or withdrawing from each other. And these are really bad places to be. But that'll come up. It'll come up, right? And one of the spouses is going to have an issue, and they're probably going to end up in therapy, which is a good thing, right? Which is a good thing. If there is a repeated problem, you need to lean on your communication skills to work through creating a change. Last two, stress management. It's up to each of us, up to me, up to you, identify stressors and make direct efforts to manage them. Your spouse is not your therapist. Your spouse is not going to take care of the stressors that you need to learn how to manage. Okay, and that's really important. Really, really important. And I would just want to make this beautiful distinction. Your spouse is supposed to minister to your needs, not fulfill your needs. Your spouse is supposed to minister to your needs, not fulfill your needs. Only Christ can fulfill your needs, right? Our hearts I love this saying, they have a God-shaped hole, right? Like our hearts, and it says, I think in Proverbs or Ecclesiastes or something that Solomon said, he said that God has placed immortality in our hearts, right? That our hearts, they're made for God. So if we are looking to our spouse to fill that gap, we're not going to get anywhere. And our spouse is going to burn out, right? Our spouse is going to burn out too. So learn to take care of yourself. And that could mean getting external support. It's fine, right? We all need it, right? What are you doing to invest in yourself? Please ask yourself this question. What are you doing to invest in yourself? What are you doing to invest in yourself? Everyone here, please, we're all adults. We're all leaders. We're all leaders. We all need to be making direct investments in ourselves. It doesn't matter who you are, right? And it doesn't matter who your spouse is. It's not about your spouse. And when you're not making direct investments in yourself, that's when these problems are going to start happening, right? Because you're going to be looking at your spouse to be fulfilling things that you should be doing for yourself, right? Marriage doesn't eliminate the individual. And anger management, there is nothing in the world that relieves you of your responsibility to behave in a Christian manner when you're angry. How do you cool yourself down? And that's, again, your responsibility, my responsibility to cool myself down. We can never say, oh, well, they said this, and that's why nope. That's not even an option. That's not even right. Nobody forced you to say anything, right? All right. So let me just time check. Are we all right on time? We're good. All right. All right. The next stuff is gonna be quick. So spiritual awareness. If you don't know where you're going, you're always in the wrong place. If you don't know where you're going, you're always in the wrong place. And the point of this aspect of the hedge around your marriage is that we need to be aware of the spiritual purpose of our marriages. We need to be aware. And I have 6 facts here that I want you to know. And I want you to know that this is why marriage, and this is why my marriage, like this is why your marriage, okay? This is why. Marriage exists as a means by which God reveals himself to you and saves you, right? And because marriage is a sacrament, and a sacrament is a means of grace, right? It's a way that God is revealing himself to you and is saving you through your marriage, right? Happy or unhappy. It's not, marriage is not supposed, is not, there's a wonderful book called Sacred Marriage, and it says, marriage is not meant to make you happy, it's meant to make you holy. Marriage is meant to make you holy, right? And I'm not saying marriage is, it's okay if you're unhappy in your marriage, I'm not saying that. But sometimes the unhappiness is really showing us something that is leading to our holiness. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. I don't want anybody here to think it's okay to just be unhappy in your marriage. That's not, God doesn't want that, right? Another fact is that marriage is a means by which God perfects you. That God is is showing you things in yourself to make you a better person, right? Like when and I remember one couple I was talking to, they're in a fight and they had it, and they want out, they're done. Like they just can't take it anymore. And I said, well, okay, look, like this is you guys are in this really bad situation. But the question that we want to ask, in addition to what does my spouse need to change, is there something that I should be doing differently? Because what would really be really bad is you guys end this relationship, and then 2 years later, you learn the lesson that you should have learned 10 years ago. And then you say, if only I learned this lesson about how to be a better person, if only I fixed this character flaw, my marriage would have still been intact and thriving, right? And we have to think about that. If only I learned that one lesson, whether it was how I speak, whether it's my following through on what I say, whatever it is, whether it's learning how to show affection, right? In a way that can be understood by my spouse. God cares about your marriage even more than you do. Like if you think that you want your marriage to be better or whatever it is, I want to tell you that God cares even more than you do. You have a calling from God, a calling for sacrifice, service, and submission to each other and to the world. That means God is calling you for something. You have it's like stand up and get ready. There's a calling for you, right? There's something for you to do. Marriage is a union that involves 2 imperfect persons. 2 imperfect persons, right? 2 imperfect people. God is present in your home and in every interaction you have with your spouse. And that's something that we want to be so crystal clear to us, because sometimes we behave as if God is not present. We behave as if God is not present. So you must personalize and internalize these facts so that you are clear on the purpose for your own marriage. So I'm going to move a little quickly. So sophisticating your perspective. So marriage is very complex, so you must think and approach your spouse in a more sophisticated way. So what I'm speaking to here is anybody who thinks like, why isn't this just easy? Why doesn't my spouse just do that? Just kind of like this lazy way of thinking, or overly simplified way of thinking about our relationships. But we actually have to think in a more sophisticated way. And I want to give you some examples of a discrepancy that you'll have in marriage, and then what linear, overly simplified thinking would say, and then what sophisticated thinking would say, okay? Imagine you have a disagreement. A linear, overly simplified way of thinking would say, I need to convince my spouse that my opinion is accurate, and theirs is inaccurate. That's an overly simplified way of thinking. Sophisticated thinking would say, assume until proven otherwise that your spouse has a different perspective on what is happening and a different experience altogether. They're experiencing what's happening differently altogether. Now, let's say, fine, you finally realize that your spouse has a different perspective. What do you do when your perspectives are different? A linear way of thinking is my spouse's perspective is inaccurate or invalid. But a sophisticated way of thinking is ask yourself why you see something the way you do and see why your spouse's perspective is also valid. There are reasons why your spouse sees things the way they do. And the reasons are not simple. They are not simple, right? Family of origin things, maybe it's just current experiences at their time in their lives, whatever it is, right? There are reasons why they see things the way they do. And once you start to see that as valid, now the conversation is going to change dramatically, right? When you realize that someone else has a valid perspective, you're like, wait, that's a very different kind of conversation. Solving a problem, either my way will go or my spouse's way will go. Actually, that is overly simplified. That is not sophisticated. A sophisticated way of thinking is actually there are more than two ways to solve a problem. There's a third way. Actually, and you know, I love to ask couples that are like in a fight, and I'm like, you know, I wonder if there's another way to solve this. Like, what do you think? You know, or I wonder if we even heard, even if we heard your spouse's opinion. Did your spouse even say their opinion? That involves the second way of solving the problem. That's the second way. The third way, I'm like, is there another way that could possibly work out, right? I wonder if there's a fourth way. And then all of a sudden they realize there's so many ways. Why are we getting stuck as a couple on my way versus your way, right? It's kind of like the coming to church on time, that's a common issue, right? Coming to church on time, right? And I know we're a little short on time right now, so, but there isn't just one way, or there aren't just two ways, by the way. There's other ways to work through this stuff, and maybe if there's time we could talk about that in Q&A. And hurt, lastly, is hurt. My spouse did or said something and now I'm hurt. My spouse is responsible for my pain. A sophisticated way of thinking is I am hurt, but I shouldn't assume that my spouse intended to hurt me. We hurt each other all the time. And I'm so sad about that. I'm sad about that. And I hate that we're hurt. I hate it. But we hurt each other all the time. I can almost guarantee you, I have yet to see it, but maybe I have and I just forgot. There is no spouse that wakes up in the morning and says, what can I do to hurt my spouse? No one does that. But we all hurt each other unintentionally, right? We all hurt each other unintentionally. And we hurt the other and we're hurt, right? Why do we hurt? Even unintentionally. Sometimes, a lot of times, because we're hurt too. And it's just, both of us are hurt. And we don't know how to get out, right? But how do we get out? I have to think in a more sophisticated way. All right, I'm hurt. Let me start to think within myself. I'm hurt. This feels really bad. All right, now, I know I'm hurt because my spouse said this and the way I'm responding emotionally is hurt. But now, did my spouse intend to hurt me? Like, does my spouse want me to feel this pain? Most of the time, no. It hurts really badly, and I can directly link it to what my spouse did. But is that my spouse's intention? Everything I just said just now all happens within you. But you don't need to talk to your spouse once to have that conversation with yourself. But once you have that conversation with yourself, the conversation with your spouse changes dramatically, right? Once you realize you're talking to someone who's on the same team, wow. When you realize you're talking to someone on your side. But to realize that, you have to think in a more sophisticated way. All right, we just got two more, guys. Resources. The hedge around your marriage is highly impacted by what you feed it. This is the hedge around your marriage. This is what's going into it, the food you're going to put into it, and there are four things. One is marital education. You need to learn stuff. Learn. Like guys, I'm speaking to myself first. But I just studied it, so I learned some stuff. Still not easy, right? It's not like I learned stuff in my brain, but then all of a sudden my heart changed. My heart didn't change to get from getting a master's degree, right? Like I actually need to still work on my heart, right? We all do. But education is needed for all of us. Books, seminars, lectures, workshops, these are things that are really important, and do them. Community is something else that you feed. Healthy couples. Please be careful about unhealthy couples. I'm not saying that we shouldn't minister to them or be there for them or we should give up friendships. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying, you know, you have a disagreement with your spouse and you call that friend up. Who's not going to say anything to help you reconcile with your spouse? We all know those people, right? They're going to be like, yeah, I can't believe she said that to you, bro. You're whipped, bro. You're whipped, right? Or they're going to say, oh, what? Yeah. Or they're going to say, bro, or they're going to say, what? He said that to you? I can't believe like you're still like he's sleeping on the couch tonight, right? They're going to say stuff like that. And what is that going to do for you? That's not going to do anything for anybody, right? That's disgusting, right? That's not right. Edifying activities, trusted people who can provide healthy and balanced guidance and advice, experts, therapists, counselors, other professionals based on need. And lastly, spiritual engagement. Prayer is a well from which you can draw tremendous support at any time. Anytime you go to this well and you get support, right? Anytime you just go and get it, right? And when you pray, if you're going to be like a healthy spouse, when you pray, say, God, I'm having this problem. I need your help and everything. Add the following point too. Please, God, if there's something in my heart that you want to change, please, God, change my heart too. Help me to receive that from you. Add that to your prayer too, please. Divine liturgy and Bible reading. All of these things are how you know that God is present. When you're praying or reading the Bible every day, God is present in that day. So when you have a challenge with your spouse, you know God is right there because you just spoke to him a few hours ago, right? He's right there, right? All right. Lastly, this is the last thing, our proactive behaviors. Yes?
I have one question from the Zoom chat.
Yes.
Kind of going back to the previous slide, but you said it earlier, a few slides back, is to invest in yourself. Are these examples of investing in yourselves, or did you mean something different? What did you mean by investing in yourself?
Yeah, thanks. So investing in yourself first begins with self-awareness. So like, it's simply sitting with yourself and asking this question and invite God into this process. Am I okay? Like, am I doing all right? Is there something that I need to grow in? If it's as simple as you're unhappy with your weight, or you feel like you get really angry, or you feel like you get very insecure when something happens, whatever it is, just do a rough general self-assessment, right? With you and God in your midst. And then what you can do also is talk to trusted people, right? And that's why the healthy Christian always has a team around them. The healthy Christian, and Christianity is not this thing that you do alone. Even the monks who are in the wilderness are not alone, right? They're surrounded by the saints. They go find some other hermit to talk to, right? They have a book of sayings from fathers, right? They're not alone, right? So what I have to do is to surround myself with people and ask them questions and see if there's anything I can grow in. But moving on from that assessment point, is things like this also work for investing in yourself. Reading, attending lectures, just being here is a way that all of you and I and myself, by preparing this, are ways that I'm investing in myself, that you're investing in yourself, right? These are healthy decisions. Do more. Like, just keep doing it, right? Surrounding yourself with healthy friends and going to therapy. I have yet to, it is so valuable for so many people to go to therapy, including for me. Right? And I have so much experience with it. And I'm so grateful for the things that I've learned in therapy, right? So I really recommend that. Prayer. All these things are ways of investing in yourself. Just from Kiko and then Cindy. Yeah.
So about this point of education, that first point that you mentioned, I mean, you mentioned earlier that we're so busy, and we genuinely are. I mean, I love to educate myself in many different ways. I love to read books. I love to listen to lectures. I love to do whatever. I do this for fun. I enjoy it. Like, it's something that I feel like it's beneficial. But I have no time. And that's just the truth. Not just because I want to feel quote unquote busy, but like, there's no time to educate myself on all the things that I need to educate myself on. Like, I'm supposed to go to work 40 hours a week, and then I'm supposed to, like, outside of work, learn about like continuous medical education and learn how to be a good husband, and then learn how to be a good parent. And then I'm supposed to like learn about, I'm supposed to work out, and I'm supposed to eat healthy, and I'm supposed to learn about diet, and I'm supposed to do like 5 million things on top of the time that I'm spending with my family, aside from the time that I'm cooking meals and sleeping. And there's
Yeah.
no time. Like, where do I find time, and how do I find the balance? And like, what am I supposed to do to be efficient about it? Because like, I noticed maybe the time in the car, I can listen to something back and forth, but like, other than that, it's extremely difficult. We all know if you have kids around, a kid that's 4 and a kid that's 2, it's impossible to do anything when they're around. So like, I just feel stuck. I feel like I'm in this place where I have the desire, but before marriage, I had the time and I had and it was so easy. I could do it. Now it's like, there's a lock on my time and it's blocked, and there's nothing that I could do about it.
Yeah.
I can't free up time unless I cut time from my sleep, which is
Yeah.
not healthy anyways.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very, very valid question. It's a very, very valid question. And I want to answer it in 2 parts by talking about investing, being investing, and then about balance. So as long as you are investing in some way, that's where you need to be. That's why we say, like, you know, when someone is struggling with a sin, we say, like, we want you to just be repenting. It's not like I want you to overcome the sin, but until you overcome the sin, repent, keep repenting, and keep repenting, and keep repenting. Right? It doesn't matter. Like I'm not going to beat someone up because they haven't overcome the sin, but I'm going to be very upset if they're not seeking repentance, right? If they're not trying to repent. So as long as you're doing some investment, that's fine, right? Which investment do you choose could be guided by values and priorities that you see, or any immediate problems. But that brings us to the next point, which is balance. It's very hard to achieve balance in your life in the short term, but you want to achieve balance in the medium term. What that means is that some days, some weeks are focused on work. Some days, some weeks are focused on the children or something, right? Maybe the children have whatever. But maybe after 2 months, I can insert a 1 day or a 3-hour quiet time retreat for myself. I can look ahead in my calendar and I can say, hey, can someone help take care of my kids? And I'm going to go and take a retreat for myself. I can plan that. So balance in the short term is very, very hard to achieve. Balance in the medium term is the goal. And then back to the first point, which is that I want to be investing. It's not, like, the journey is just as important as the end. The journey is just as important as the end. And I just, like, I don't want us to fall into despair or to be discouraged because there's 5,000 things I need to learn. When am I going to learn the 5,000 things? You're going to learn them starting with number 1, and then number 2, and then number 3, and then number 4. And you're going to keep going, right? And so I hope that kind of is responsive to what you were saying. Yeah. Cindy.
So less of a question, maybe it's a question or a comment, but when you first said investing, I was going to give another example of maybe investing. The first thing I thought of was what I know when I self-reflect, what I need is a break. And sometimes I'm stressed and overwhelmed, and I know what helps me is asking for help. Like sometimes just like, I think we neglect to just maybe reach out and say, maybe someone else can take this task on for me for a little bit so I can go, even if it's, 5 minutes is not enough, I'm not gonna lie, but like go get a massage, or like just, a day off, or I need, I can't cook this meal tonight, can someone do it for me, or whatever it might be. And that's of course my housewife mentality, but like, I think that's the first thing I thought of when you said invest in yourself, like recognize what you need today, right now in this moment where you're feeling up here at a 10. What can get you to a 5?
Yeah, and you're saying self-awareness and then do something about it, right? And sometimes I want to add to that point because it's such an important point. Sometimes you asserting that is already very therapeutic and beneficial. Like you're just asserting, like, I need time for myself, and watching your environment respond to that is like, all right, I still have, like, okay, all right, I'm okay. I'm gonna get my time. My environment is okay. They honor that. And that by itself is a very beneficial thing for yourself. And then executing on it is really good. Yeah, great, thank you. Yeah.
I mean, just to piggyback off of that of what Kiko said, I think in general, right? If everything, like you said too, if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. And yes, as you're sitting here, and I'm thinking each one is individually more important than the previous point, and I'm just like, we're screwed. We're right. So we can't have that mentality. So I think we just have to, I mean, there's no formula, unfortunately, right? So each one of us have our own struggles and our own issues. And I think we just have to tackle them one at a time, like you said, right? And
Yeah.
it's going to be different for every single person, and the cause and effect is going to be different for
Yeah.
every single one of us.
And it's very iterative. Sometimes you try something and then you're like, wait, that wasn't so helpful. So I'll try a different investment, and you figure it out, right? But you take one step, and there's this nice saying that says the first step is half the distance, right? The first step is half the distance. Like, just take that first step. It's kind of like the prodigal son, right? He just took some steps back, but he didn't have to walk all the way back, right? The father came to him, right? And so what we want to do is not get stuck on the imperfection. Get stuck on a step in the right direction, right? Focus on taking one step in the right direction. All right, so just to finish this up, proactive behaviors. The positive energy in your relationship is a core part of the foundation that you stand on during challenging times. Before I talk about this, I just want to tell you at a high level, just so you know what we're going to talk about before our brains collapse from all this content, is there are couples, families that are negatively charged. There's negative energy. You can tell when you walk into their homes. You can tell they feel it when they walk into their homes, right? Like, they're unhappy. There's fighting. There isn't a lot of love being exchanged, right? It's just not good. There's other couples and families where you walk and you see them, they're just smiling, they face challenges, they're resilient, they're all this stuff, right? If you're a positively charged couple and there's an issue and something that needs to be resolved, you just work through it and you keep going, right? If you're a negatively charged couple or family and a challenge comes, you collapse, right? And that's why sometimes somebody says, but Makar, we need to, he needs to speak to me differently. I'm like, you can ask for him to speak to you differently all you want. Nothing is going to change in this marriage unless you change the charge of this marriage, right? Unless you change the energy of this marriage, right? You're right in what you're asking. You're right in identifying the change that needs to be made. But in the sequence of changes that need to be made, in the priority order of what needs to be made, of the changes that need to be made, that is not the first change. Because you could ask for more respect, you could ask for more sexual intimacy, you could ask for more spiritual leadership, you could ask for whatever you want. You could just keep asking. You're right in what you're asking for. But nothing's going to happen because the relationship is negatively charged. We want to increase we want to make our relationships positively charged. And look at this as if it's like a balance. On the right side, on the left side, is positive, proactive behaviors, which cost nothing and can be exercised regardless of what is happening on the other side of the scale. They cost nothing, and it doesn't matter when it happens. You can always do them. They're free. They cost nothing, right? You could always do them. On the other side is often negatively charged experiences that you can't control, whether you can't control when they happen, you can't control what they are, you can't control the magnitude of the negativity in them. And there are a lot of work to manage. Like, to do something about them is a ton of work, right? The positive things, they come they're so easy, they're quick, you could just do them. You don't need an excuse to do them. The negative ones, they're a lot of work to fix. You can't control when they come, and you can't control how big they are, right? What are examples of the negative things? Stress, pressures, work, children, fatigue, fears and concerns, health issues. These are negatively charged things. What we want to be increasing is these positive and proactive behaviors. We want to increase these things. Communicate love. Does it cost anything to say, I love you? Does it cost anything to touch your spouse? Does it cost anything? Do you need an excuse for that? Do you need a reason, right? Is there ever a wrong time, actually? Is there ever a wrong time to say I love you? I can't think of a wrong time, right? I can't think of one, not even one, right? And actually, sometimes some parenting approaches tell you, once you discipline your kids, tell them you love them right after, right? Like there's never a wrong time to say I love you, right? Or to communicate love in your partner's love language. If you don't know what your partner's love language is, ask them, read about it. Spend one-on-one time with each other where you can connect, right? Check in with each other regularly on the state and the quality of your marriage. And I find that the later you go, the longer your marriage is, the more awkward it could be to ask, how is our marriage doing? It's almost like, wait, like we've been married for like 6 years, 10 years. Why am I going to ask that question? It's kind of a weird question to ask. Or sometimes we're just afraid of the answer. Like, wait, we've been doing the same thing for 10 years. What if he says that something needs to change? I don't know if I could do that, right? Be on the lookout for opportunities to give to your spouse. Time is limited. Why miss an opportunity to increase the positive energy in your relationship? When you do this, when this stuff comes, you're going to be all right. You can work through it. You're so resilient, okay? So in conclusion, the hedge around your marriage is skills that we must learn and practice. These are new abilities that lead our marriages to better day-to-day outcomes. Spiritual awareness, be deeply aware of the ultimate purpose of your marriage. Sophisticating your perspective, so appreciate and engage with the complexity of your inner self and your spouse's inner self. Feed the hedge around your marriage with good things like good resources. And lastly, create positive energy. Create it, just create it. Like, God creates out of nothing, right? He creates out of nothing. So, and we say to him, create in me a clean heart. Like if you don't have a clean heart, he can just, boom, create it. He's a creator, right? We have an extension of that power. We can create positive energy. Just do it. Just create out of nothing, right? You have a minute where you're not saying anything to each other. Just create positive energy. What's the announcement at the end? Should I give the announcement now or questions? Okay, George.
Thank you. That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. I thought that was, no, really, it was probably one of the best click talks. Before I get into my question, my suggestion, my desire is that you would break up every one of these 5 into its own session, because there's a lot of stuff here.
Yeah.
And this is, like you said, I don't want you to be overwhelmed. Sorry, I'm overwhelmed. Very, very overwhelmed. And there's just so much here in every one of these that you could probably talk about each one for hours and hours. And so I think it's really important because this is like a really good framework. Having said that, can you go back to slide 1 real quick? Like that's a good one. That's a great one. No, but I mean, seriously, they are as a practical matter. This first slide. This is great. So, and here's my question. So like kind of what Kiko was saying, but from my own, like the way I'm conceptualizing it, I find myself saying a lot, specifically like to my employees, because that's where I find I have these conversations. I have a lot of employees, half of them are married. People will just come in my office and complain about their spouse. Like, I care, or I have time, or I know what's going on. I don't know why. I don't know why they perceive, seriously, 65 employees, they just, not anymore now because it's remote. I was telling one of my,
This is the longest intro I've ever heard.
it is. I'm getting there.
No, I'm just joking around.
I'm getting
whatever
there.
you say.
I'm getting there. Come on. So one of my like higher level executives, she came in one day and I told you the story. She broke down, and my husband, and everything's terrible. And I was just kind of like, okay, again, like I'm not qualified for this. But I try to, give them whatever I can. And it always goes back to like marriage is hard work is what I'm getting at. And so when I say that a lot, this is the work part that I see, like of all the slides, this is the stuff that you could learn. And this is the stuff that you can hone and improve, right? That would be like the hard work. And she said, she was like, marriage is supposed to be fun. And that's when I replied to her, well, it can be fun, but it's supposed to be hard work. Like any job, if you don't work at it, you're going to see the negative effects. And so I had a hard time articulating to her what the work was. Like I kept saying over and over again, you got to talk and you have to like go out and all this like fluffy stuff that wasn't as articulate as any of this, or poignant or specific. And so it's awesome to see it. My question is, and even then when I throw out those 2 or 3 things, how do you pick, like, generally, what is, like, how do you prioritize what to work on? And I know some couples might know what the problem is. Some might not. Like, you know, like you were saying, some just like this negative energy and they're fighting about everything and it doesn't really matter. How do you tell someone, like, because I go play back that situation. I'm like, what could I have said that she could have went home and, you know, like, I can't say, you know, do you pray? Do you go to church?
Yeah.
For many, I can't.
Yeah.
Like, how do you give them something of all this beautiful articulation that's like, how do you focus on something? Going back to what Kiko said, I want to work on all this stuff. I'm looking at it and I'm like, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah. So first, I'll say 3 things. First, sometimes it doesn't matter if you don't know where to start somewhere. Like, and I want you to know, as Christians, we believe that when we offer something to God, we offer him the little and he makes it great, right? Like the 2 mites, the 5 loaves and 2 fish, all this stuff, right? We have so many examples of that. So sometimes, and sometimes just making an effort puts our heart in the right place, which is really the bigger issue. Like when you say, I'm going to make an effort, that is such a big deal. Like it's exactly that moment when the prodigal son came to himself. Like when you say, I'm going to make an effort, that is such a big deal, right? It puts your heart in the right place. It doesn't even matter what the effort's going to be. That's number 1. Number 2, I would say that sounds like a very significant situation. I would definitely encourage them to get a therapist. Definitely. Number 3, always start with the things that you don't need that are not conditioned on the other person. Like the things that don't need the other person to do anything, right? I can always change the way I communicate. It doesn't matter how my spouse changes the way they communicate. And it takes 2 people to keep a fight going and only 1 person to diffuse it, right? So, and that's me. And if it's me every time until I find something else to do, that's fine too, right? But with the therapist, for example, this sounds like a pretty severe situation. The therapist, one of the things you could challenge is, hey, it seems like I wonder why you got married. You know, and she needs to shift. Like, you don't get married. Marriage is supposed to be fun, but it's not only for fun, right? It's for salvation. It's for God. It's for perfection. It's for growth. It's for so many things. So it's supposed to be fun too. Like, if there's no fun, there's a problem. I want it to be fun for everyone, every single person, no exceptions. I want it to be great, right? But sometimes, actually, you know what? You can't have fun when someone has a cancer diagnosis. It's going to be so hard to have fun, right? It's going to be like this cloud over them all the time, right? But they could probably, if they have a healthy marriage, they'll still find ways to have fun, right? So I'm not giving you like, this is what they should do answer, but I'm just giving you like the general things, which is number 1, start somewhere. Number 2, get help. That's a pretty significant situation, get a therapist. Number 3 is start with the things that you can do on your own. And stop. For now, do not ask your spouse to change anything. That's a negatively charged marriage, which means don't ask your spouse to change anything. Don't ask. Give it up for the time being. There's nothing to ask for. They're not going to change anything. Everyone's hurt. Everyone's hurt. You can't ask for anything. So.
We did ask where to start, but say you do find a good look at your marriage and it looks like the trenches of World War I. Where do you start to generate that positive cloud?
I heard the last part, but not the first part of your question.
So I just said, basically, if you look at a marriage, like that marriage he's describing, it looks like the 2 of them have been shelling each other for years and it's just a no man's land between them. How do you start growing some foliage in that no man's land so that it starts looking like a healthy relationship again, rather than just a burned out mess?
Yeah. I would say, like, start communicating love. Just like we were saying, start communicating love. Even if you don't, like, sometimes, you know, we don't feel in love with our spouse, like in that moment, like, you know, you don't feel in love, that butterflies in your stomach feeling, but it doesn't change the objective reality of, like, we love each other. And even you could just say, you know what, I love this person, like, in my general way of loving all humans. I just love this person, like, as a human. But if you hate that person, then you need work on yourself, right? But so communicate love. Pull back from conflict. Pull back. Don't engage in it. Just, like, find ways to in a respectful way to get out of it. Like, I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but honestly, I mean, I think those two will make a huge, shooting. Yeah, stop shooting and stop shooting harmful words. You know, just stop shooting harmful words, harmful tone, right? Like in every conflict, everyone is contributing to it. In every conflict, like both are contributing to it, right? Yeah.
I wanted to add a couple of things.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've heard a lot of things, and maybe you guys have heard this, so I apologize if it's repetitive, but in all of our relationships, okay, who is the only relationship you choose? It's your spouse. It's the only relationship you choose. You don't get to choose who your parents are. You don't get to choose who your kids are. You don't get to choose who siblings are. You don't get to choose anything. The spouse is the only one you get to choose. So I think that one that tells us loving each other is not a problem. You definitely, we can all agree, we loved each other at one point in time for sure, 100%. So I think fundamentally, us as humans, we are selfish people, right? We are selfish people. And when you're married, it's not all about you anymore. It's about you and the other person coming together as a cohesive unit, like this marriage. So the fact that I think just generally there's a misconception that should be flawless. And I think we can all agree that's impossible to be flawless. It's just impossible. There's always going to be conflict. And I think that also, if I had to summarize this in a couple words, George said it, Kiko said it, relationships are hard work. no matter if you like it or not, that's the fact. It is hard work. And I think that, you know, people just have that misconception that that's not true. And then you also spiral downhill when people start saying, well, maybe I married the wrong person. It would have been better if my spouse was just an inch taller. It would have been fine, right? Guess what? That inch taller wife, you'll have a bunch of other issues, right? There's no such thing as fairy tales. Cinderella, all those Disney movies doesn't exist. There's no soulmates. I don't know if anybody believes in soulmates, but I don't believe in them personally. I don't think they exist. I don't. I think that you love your spouse and you have to do what you have to do to make it work. And there's no such thing as another person would have been much better. So you get rid of that mentality and you always think that, yeah, I have to work to make this work. And I love you no matter what, and we work through everything, you'll be happy and you'll have fun.
Yeah, and just like it's instead of saying if I had a different wife, like my life would have been much better. You could say, well, if she had a different husband, you know, if I was a different person, things would have been much better, you know. And I want to be a better person. I want to be a different person, right? And like that's the right place to start.
Sorry, one more thing for
Yeah.
those of you on the line who are not married yet, don't be scared. Marriage is great. It really is. You just got to work on it. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there any other questions or comments or concerns, disagreements? All right, so we have an announcement. Our announcement is actually we're doing something called, we've contracted with a third-party agency to do a couple checkup. It's going to be running for 4 weeks, and we're going to be announcing this via email and over the next few weeks. The couple checkup is by this organization called Prepare Enrich, and what it does is if you take this QR code, take a picture of it, or you go to this website, ctrla.church/couple checkup, and what you'll do is there's a code here. There's all this stuff once you go to this website that'll tell you what to do. And you and your spouse, and this is for your fiance too, or your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, your significant other, you can take this checkup. And what it is an assessment. It's I think it's probably like 20 minutes of questions. You'll go through them quickly. They're really easy to answer. You and your spouse will both take it. And then you're going to get a personalized report for yourself that no one else is going to see. The Click Ministry will not see this report. No one's going to see it except you. You're going to get a personal report that tells you what are the areas that are your strength areas and the areas that are growth areas for you as a couple. The Click Ministry is going to get one report that that covers everyone as it's like a summary report with no personalized information. Okay, well, it's kind of like it's going to say, 25 couples said this and 30 couples said that, and the top area in the couples that answered was this area. Like that. Those are the types of things that the Click Ministry is going to get. The church is paying for this, and I think it's a really good thing. And what we'll do as the Click Ministry, God willing, Sean and Nicole and I, with God's grace, we're going to go through the results after December 20th, and we're going to have a summarized report while you guys have your own personalized report, and to show us where are areas where we can grow, topics we should be talking about, topics that we're really good at, and things like that. So that'll be really helpful for all of us. So step one is just follow the QR code and the link, and we're going to send an email. All the instructions are there, God willing. Any questions? All right. Glory be to God forever. Amen.
Just one other